There she is. Hey, folks. Are you here, Daria? We lost you for a second. I'm glad you're back.
I'm so sorry. I have like the original iPad. Sometimes don't work so well. I apologize. No. The technical issues that Kevin mentioned beforehand were entirely on this end.
That's all good, man. I'm grateful that at least you were able to come back to us. I was trying to tell stories about my memories of you, both on NRK and then I remember hearing a story about how you showered your husband with fanfare for Dallas Day, where you had to be in like some silky robe, fawning over him in a bath for PDX Spotlight. Is that right?
Kevin, every day is Dallas Day.
Oh, really? Okay, nice. So he gets that every day. Grapes fed to him, and
he gets it pretty good.
Nice, awesome. I was talking about Radio Free Daria and just how when I first met you, we did the on-air episode with Mike Chase. You were co-hosting with Mike Chase, and I remember just you were fairly new to the radio industry at that point, and it cracked me up so bad that I couldn't even perform. And another story that I heard about you from another radio DJ was that your first day in, you were going live and forgot your headphones, and so you had to be salvaged or saved at that point. So,
well, I didn't have any headphones.
Do you even remember that far back?
Yeah, I remember the first day very, very well. But at the time, NRK was it was like a college radio station at a really small college. The facility itself was this tiny little room in the basement, and I didn't have any headphones, so we had to scrounge around to find a facsimile of a pair.
One of the other broadcasters had mentioned it to me, Ray Spanner. At that point, I think, do you remember Mike May, Ray Spanner?
I do.
Okay, yeah.
There were lovely people there.
Yeah, I'm sure. You've got all sorts of the stories. I was trying to share my screen to give a little bit of your TEDx talk because I've had some other contemporaries of yours like Dave Scott and Iris Harrison on my show talking about the brutal reality of radio. Dan Bozick, another one, that could just talk about how fickle the business can be. The TEDx talk was great because you put some humor into something that was kind of heartbreaking. It was like enough of a crushing blow to kick your ass in the industry. And, but this podcast and the focus on this has been oftentimes the same kind of thing, right? You have to completely upend your identity and start over again. And that's what what your TEDx talk was about. So
and it turns out I'm not really good at it. The thing with podcasting, and I love it, but when I lost my 20-year radio job, I had been really naive in thinking that this is just something that I'm going to do until I'm done doing it. That this is the job I'll retire with. And with podcasting and not having like accountability from some sort of like person that's responsible for my income or a deadline per se, it's I've had a lot of like crazy anxiety surrounding it, and to physically like just sit down and do it sometimes is so weirdly hard. I don't know if you find that to be the case as well, but I sort of got knocked down so hard, and because the radio show and expressing myself thereon was not another person, but was my sole identity. When that got axed, I felt like I did as a person as well in some way.
An interesting thing about observing you, when I listen to your podcast, oh my God, like the stories, you're an incredible storyteller. And, so being dependent on somebody else, like you had, whenever you were doing radio, right, you had a sidekick, and so you guys could feed off each other. When I do this show, I'm not good at it at all. I mean, I'm not a professional by any means, but I love people. I love the interaction and discovering people. Yeah. And I know that about you. When you talk about stories, you've got this fantastic way to describe other people. I was listening to the Ghost of Scott Baio episode, and you were the way that you explain how somebody looks is incredible. You talked about your friend that was a dead ringer for Chris Farley, this gal, right? You've got a knack for it. I don't know that you need a sidekick. I think telling stories, you're so funny. Uh, we have some similar sort of geographical backgrounds. You mentioned something about having a time in Montana.
I was conceived in Missoula.
That's in where I was born as well.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, that's nutty. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that maybe that's why there's some connectivity. But the identity thing, going back to that, if you had to sort of pitch yourself again to another radio station, or say you're going to Sirius Radio, right? Say you know that Howard Stern got his big deal, or Joe Rogan, or whoever has these massive contracts. If you had to go and pitch yourself to a podcast, to an organization like Sirius, uh, would you feel like your identity had been sort of dashed by these career hiccups, with radio?
Well, hopefully not, because what I love to do and what I love to talk about and express, remains completely constant. I am most adequate at and comfortable with the love between people and finding common ground and stories where, well, a really good example, I think, is the years that I spent listening to public radio, and in particular, Garrison Keillor's Tales from Lake Wobegon,
Yeah.
which I was dashed to find out wasn't a real place, because
Right.
he painted this so vividly, and you got to know the people and the characters and their quirks and their escapades and their foibles. And I think that he was talking about life as a boy in maybe the 50s or maybe even before.
Mm-hmm.
But it was so hugely both comforting and relatable to me, a teenage girl, in a much different generation. And I think the stories from our childhood, our adolescence, our 20s and onward, or if you can find that sort of thing that we all go through, there's and deal with pain or frustration in a hopefully humorous way, I think that bonds us as humans in such a beautiful way. And I think stories told live even more so, because I think oral storytelling is everything.
Yeah.
And you can go as far back as to before we could communicate, we would, if we were lucky, have parents that read to us at night or told us stories at night. And there's something about that process that hits us as humans on a deep and wonderful level.
God, the connectivity right now is important, right? I mean, with the pandemic, we've been so
Oh my
isolated,
gosh, right?
And if we, if Garrison Keillor was still out doing Tales of Lake Wabigon,
Wow, he's
we need those kinds of relatable stories. I mean, he did describe something that almost anyone could relate to, at a core level. And your things are like that too. Your observations have kind of a dark twist to them sometimes, which I love. And I think you bring people together on your podcast. You talk about relationships, and even when you're biting, I think it disarms people. Right now, there's so much conflict, and just like bitterness, with the social media, and we had like crazy political, stuff going on the last several years, and rather than bring people together,
and had to self-isolate. So our connection with people and with talking to them and with just loving each other got so weirdly and abruptly and unprecedentedly shut off and
Right.
and messed with.
Yeah,
I hear what you're saying.
I I think if you were going to pitch yourself to like a Sirius, I could imagine you being just really universally accepted, because everything that you always speak about, even though they're your experiences, you make everybody feel like they were right there with you, which is awesome. Because I think if you were broadcasting about the pandemic, or about experiences with the pandemic, you might make people feel a little less sort of discouraged by how life has changed. But you've overcome over time. I mean, just the amount of times that you did radio and just kept getting kicked and kicked and kicked. At some point, you've either got to just say, okay, enough speed bumps, man. I'm getting off this road, or you just become a lot stronger. You talked about your anxiety, and even before we went live, to me in text, you said, I've got, I'm very anxious, but you come across so confident, right? Do you find that people are surprised by that character trait in you?
Well, first off, I don't want to belittle my radio experience too much. I mean, it was certainly no more difficult than what every working person will go through at some time.
Sure.
In fact, probably much easier than most jobs. And I did stay 20 years under one roof, which was pretty unheard of.
It is.
The end was bad.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't look negatively back on my experience at all. As far as anxiety goes, I think, and I have no research of any kind to back this up, but I think that it's much, much more widespread than people take note of or are aware.
Absolutely.
I think that it's normal to be anxious in the sort of society that we live in today, with so many conflicting messages and new things to worry about that we haven't even thought of popping up here and there. And I think that a lot of performers deal with a tremendous amount of anxiety, and people would think that they would be the last to live with such a condition. But from friends that are actors, musicians, what have you, so many of them find that the performing and that interacting with an appreciative, loving world in that way is their comfort zone.
Sure.
Just being everyday tasks, trying to deal with stuff, interaction with people, just in a non-performative sense, is where the anxiety lies.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. I didn't realize that I had anxiety until the pandemic hit, to be honest with you. I and really even the understanding of depression. I talk about it a lot on this show, that when the identity crisis came, along came a really deep-seated depression.
Yeah.
That the things that fulfill you, the things that you really identified with as your your life's purpose, all of a sudden that gets shaken, and it's really it's paralyzing in some ways. And
yes,
so
it is.
I talked about it a lot, and I'll put this link up here again, because once I started talking about mental health issues, a lot of people have chimed in. They've all got some kind of anxiety or other mental health issues. If you're out there and you're struggling, I'm gonna put this phone number down for a second, because like you said, performers, we're used to having to put on a show, right? When you're presenting something, even though you want to present your authentic self, there's a shield between you and being completely vulnerable.
And you can name and identify the anxiety. That's a big part of it. If you're about to perform and you feel the jitters and the nerves and that fight or flight thing, you know what it's about.
Right.
This is normal, and I'm about to go on stage. It's that feeling, that sort of dread and nameless fear and paralyzing qualities when you don't know why.
Right.
That I think can be the most life damaging.
Yeah, it's scary.
What did you find, honey? What did you find brought you some comfort during those periods?
Well, for sure. I mean, therapy, I had to have it. I'm in a dialectical behavior therapy group right now, 6-month program. Medication was important because I discovered that I have bipolar, not bipolar, but borderline personality disorder. So there's some family genetic stuff that led to it. But realizing that most of the things that caused me anxiety were completely out of my control, right?
Sure.
So the pandemic, for sure, was something that, like the byproduct that came along with the pandemic, all of those things that were difficult, work not coming in, gigs not being able to be performed, things that were happening to my kid, really felt protective of my kids and felt like there was futility in me trying to do things for them. So a lot of the anxiety was, they talk about anxiety being fear, and my fear was the things that I couldn't control, and that'll.
I just found a great new therapist. I love him. I've been in therapy for like 15 years, and then
Yeah.
right around, well, for reasons, collective reasons, it stopped abruptly. And I just found the best new therapist. And he says that you can hardly even find a referral these days.
Yeah.
That people are just going in throngs to therapy for onset of depression, onset of anxiety, onset of all sorts of things that maybe it's for the first time, maybe they've been working through them their whole lives and they just flared up during all of this. But, people, yourself and other people who are feeling this way, you're so not alone. You're really feeling this sort of like global unconscious / conscious that it's fine. You've got reason to be anxious and depressed. It's just finding your best tools to manage it.
It's when you find a therapist like that gets you. That's another thing. People are afraid to. First of all, a lot of people that I know were fearful of going to a therapist because they felt like, I can control this myself. Again, it's a control issue, right? It's and that kind of power struggle is futile. It's ridiculous.
Making the appointment is the hardest part, I find.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm involved in a recovery program too, right? I mean, that first step of acknowledging you got a problem, right, is the hardest step, and in that whole process, the serenity prayer, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. I mean, everything that's happened in the pandemic is recognizing that all of those things you can't do anything about, and wisdom to know the difference. The wisdom that came with therapy and medication and working with in a steps process, not just recovery process, but it's really been a life shift and recognizing that I can manifest greatness in my life by putting the things that I'm able to manage in front of me and then take away the other stuff, and so I've got tools now, which is great. And I'm grateful to have a great therapist. I've got a killer sponsor, and I've got good friends that understand me. When I was open and vulnerable about talking about depression, anybody that knows, I try to be the most positive person I know, right? My company is called Silver Lining Media. I look at the glass half full as often as I can. And I'm on stage smiling like crazy because I love people and I love performing. And so a lot of people that don't really know me were so surprised that I talk about being depressed. They're like, what do you have to be depressed about, right? You're on top of the world, man. You got a great gig and you got family. But we're all human. We're all dealing with different things, whether biological or you let stuff affect you. And when I say, yeah, man, you know what? I let shit get to me, and it kicked my ass. But the main goal is to figure out what stuff kicks your ass, avoid those things, right? And figure out what you can do to manage, use some tools to be able to manage life as it throws curveballs at you.
One thing that struck me about, first, congratulations. And I think it's wonderful that you're on the journey you're on and you articulate it beautifully. And I feel glad that joy's been able to permeate you in this way. One thing that struck me is how you said, people that know you are so surprised to find out that you suffer from depression, that you live with depression. And don't you find that because as performers or just as people, the comfort of those around you is so important. Yeah. And people that are depressed oftentimes are the last people you would think, because they've developed a wonderful, not wonderful, but they've developed an elaborate set of a way of presenting, to let people know that everything's fine, I'm great, I'm happy, and I'm social, and I'm interactive. But because that's a conscious thing that you're putting on for the comfort largely of others, it's mentally and physically exhausting.
Yeah,
it's
Robin Williams,
so
right?
tiring because you're working all the time to convey that non-depressed person.
Yeah, right.
And it'll literally zap your energy right out.
You're a mom. right? So you talk about presenting. When you think about like protecting your kids' feelings, that's one thing for me too. I realized that, I want my kids to feel comfortable. They want them to feel safe. And the dissolution of
And not worry about you.
yeah, of course, you wouldn't want them to worry about you, or you want to protect their feelings in the external world too. So yeah, as long as you say everything's gonna be fine, I'm good, I'm all cool, when really you feel like you're going down with the ship,
Mm.
what you're really doing is presenting an opportunity for your kids to see that it's okay to kind of lie about where you're really at. What I found that in this situation now is that I'm so brutally honest with my kids, and I don't want them to see that I'm masking my feelings. I want to be able to talk about it, because when you put the stuff away and you hide it, what it does for me, it was just manifest just this horrible, crushing, emotional drain. And
Mm.
if I can be really vulnerable and just say, look, today is tough, man. It's not just any specific thing. I'm just feeling overwhelmed. And
Mm.
so, first of all, know that it's not you, it has nothing to do with you. It's just where I'm at. And I'm working on dealing with it. But if you can give me a little grace, just so that I can work stuff out, and I'd love a hug. That's as my two kids are boys, right? They're grown adults now, 19 and 22, and I want them to be able to express their feelings.
I think that's a great gift to them. I think you're a wonderful dad, Kevin.
Oh, I thank you. I'm working at it. I mean, we're all working at this. I know that this is funny, that people might not really have expected this conversation to happen, but it's real. I mean, that's what this is about, right? When you and I are on in the radio station and the
Mm.
mics are off, this is the kind of stuff that you and I be chatting about.
Mm.
What I
Mhm.
love about the show is that most of my friends that we've been traveling and touring with, we've been discussing what we do, during the pandemic, like how we're dealing with our families. And then when the show is on, people get to see and imagine what goes on backstage, right? They think, oh, it's parties and, blow and hookers, whatever. But but really, backstage, this is the kind of conversation they'd be having. I love being able to share this, be vulnerable and authentic. And I've watched the way that you're so focused on your family. I would imagine that this radio journey that you've been on, I mean, you've dealt in entertainment your whole life. I mean, since your whole adult life, it sounds like, right?
Mm. Mm.
So, and you had to put on a show. You've had to be the entertainer when the radio business rocked your world. You talk about it in your TEDx about how to reinvent yourself in some ways. Um, how has the family seen this for you? How's Dallas deal with, yeah, my bride is, my bride's identity has been compromised by the industry. So what kind of support do you get? What do you ask for from your family for help?
Well, that's a really good question. Um, it's been really fortuitous in that my and this is the bright side. Like it's been hard too, but I'm really, excuse me, my legs cramping. um, Dallas, my husband, was a professional lacrosse goalie for about 30 years.
30.
And
Okay.
when we fell in love and met and got married, he was coming to the very end of his career. Now, that was the whole identity that he was perceived at by all of his peers, by all
Right.
of his friends, by all of his colleagues, by anyone in the world who followed the sport and him in particular. His whole entire identity was wrapped up in this profession. So he knew
He gets it.
exactly what I was going through and the ways that it hurt and the way you question yourself and where people disappear to when you're no longer um, representing the profession they know you as.
That's right.
So I've had a tremendous amount of emotional support from and understanding from him, as I hope he has with me as well. And then two, this this sort of lack of employment, lack of job identity, dovetailing with COVID the way it did, in a way, of course, is harder because the jobs I wasn't getting were even less coming my way.
Right.
But our sweet little boy is 11, about to turn 12 in a few weeks. He was
Wow.
right at the age where it would be natural for him to start to pull away a little bit and um, be the, preteen and stuff like this. We feel like we got extra years of grace period
Yeah.
of just getting to. I'm going to start tearing up. Oh my
No,
God.
it's great. No,
Uh,
no, it's a beautiful thing.
Because we had to um, keep him close and keep him safe and be protected with the pandemic. I feel like we got the gift of more years of innocence with him.
No, it's so sweet. I love it. Oh,
So in that respect, it's been a wonderful gift.
God, that's so great. If you look back, right, when you go 20 years from now, and your boy's, out of the house and doing whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of people would look back at the pandemic and just think, oh my God, that thing just rocked my world in so many bad ways. But if you can see those gifts, I too, even though my kids were adults, I spent so much time with them, and it was important because I knew how how precious those moments were, and they're going away. They're probably really sick of me hugging them, but I'm a hugger, man, and I needed it.
Yeah,
And if
I know you are.
But I think it's great that you recognize it, because a lot of people got so wrapped up in what they didn't have during the pandemic, what they couldn't do, which is why people are kind of having COVID fatigue, right? They're risking everything by just kind of dropping their guard, because they're so caught up in what they couldn't do and how their freedom was limited. But if you look at the gifts, that the pandemic brought, some silver linings, I mean, that's a beautiful one for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And you couldn't buy that with all the money really in the world.
Absolutely not. There'd be no other circumstances I can think of where we get to have our sweetest boy around us within hugging distance every single day.
Yeah, unless whatever. Yeah, I mean, because even if you had unlimited funds, right? Even but your son still be going to school. You got to have him at home for school, right? So that. And are you in a hybrid situation now, where he's kind of doing half and half with in school?
Well, no, his school offered it, but he was he was doing 6th grade virtually, and I guess here it was probably different where you grew up too, like me, but here it's 6th, 7th, 8th, I think, is middle school. So he would have been going in with the littlest kids.
Okay.
And I think starting in such a weird way, it was only going to be 2 more months, and he's thriving during the at-home stuff.
Wow.
So we figured we just didn't want to take any chances. I mean, sure, he'll probably be healthy, but if he's happy at home,
yeah.
And his teachers are great.
Oh.
And I love being able to just be there during the school day if he has, concerns or wants help or wants a snack or wants whatever else. So we decided we'd just keep him out for the 6 weeks or whatever remaining. And then when he starts in the fall, it'll be a fresh start, and he'll be not one of the youngest kids. He'll be a cool 7th grader.
I love
if such a thing exists.
God, man, that again, another opportunity that you just would not have even really had or been able to really take. When we think about, I talked about, even if you had all the money in the world, if Daria was not a radio, a seasoned radio vet, what would you have been at this point in your life? What was the?
I would like to be a writer of ideally young adult fiction.
Okay. Have you been doing any narration, any audiobooks or anything like that?
Only my own stuff.
Really?
And I joined, Kevin. I wasn't hired exactly. I think it was an extended trial period, but a voiceover company.
Okay.
And they just, I guess I was not for them.
Really? It's surprising me. Maybe because, those things are already pre-written. If there's an opportunity for you to voice your own words, I cannot believe how creative your podcasts are. They're so fun. And I think, if I have it listed down here, Radio Free Daria podcast, but I got it through iTunes. I'm not sure where your podcasts are. They on
I
Spotify?
think you can get it from anywhere. And
Okay.
then I did about 30 stories for just straight up podcasting. And then now I have a Patreon account at the same name.
Okay. Fantastic. And so, people, if you're watching this, make sure you get out there and catch those. Let's talk about some fun stories in the air. I see that right now. Somebody in chat says S&M on NRK was a golden era dawning in local radio shows. Been a good long while since. And Daria, thanks for sharing your talent and this through the following decades. You know, you were there for
That's really nice. Thank you so much.
I mean, you were there for formative years for people, you know, like discovering adulthood in a lot of ways, right? So the music was going along with Flock of Seagulls. I grew up in that era where I just loved how that music there was no drama. We didn't worry about politics or, you know, or taxes or any of that kind of crap. It was just about celebration of life
it was
and each other.
transportive, and it was, yeah.
Yeah, so we, you know, in your era too, even though that 90s especially been a real big part of your early radio time, the music itself, you know, you entered Lilith Fair era, you had the grunge era, you had all those the sort of
the revival of swing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Man Squirrel Nut Zippers and Cherry Poppin' Daddies and all those kinds of bands were happening then. But I know that people felt like they knew you just through the air. You know, like just listening to you felt like they were your friend, even though they'd never met you in person. So
that's how it felt for me too.
Did it? Yeah, like
absolutely.
You seemed like you had a better connection with your audience, you know, personally than maybe, you know, some of your coworkers.
Well, I can't speak that, you know, everybody has their own experience, but I think because it was a career I had never planned, and because of theater and storytelling background, perhaps, I didn't create a private persona. That could very well just have been naivete on my part. You know, I didn't know what I was really doing, so I just, you know, did whatever came naturally. But yeah, the people that have listened that I've had the great fortune to meet and interact with over the years they're absolutely my friends. Yeah. Every show I would envision talking to those people, and it was a very legitimate friendship and exchange, and that's one of the things I miss the most. It felt
sincere, for sure.
I'm glad you felt that way, honey. Oh, you're frozen. Am I frozen for you?
Yeah. No, how about some of like the fun experiences that you look back on now? If you're going to write it. Oh no, I got you. You froze up for a second. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
You have me? I'm here. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Can you hear me?
Hey, if you can hear me. Okay, cool. I was gonna ask you. Yep, we're good. I was gonna ask you about some funny experiences you had on the air. Some of maybe the on-air guests and talent that you had.
Oh, I should have prepared something beforehand. Let me think. Oh, there was one time when the show went to New York City after the month after 9/11. And it was the thing that I think Eric Katz at the time had put together to show support. And we got to broadcast live from the Comedy Central building. And it was when people like Steve Colbert and Stephen Carell were just basically starting out on The Daily Show. And Jon Stewart as well. And it was my first visit to New York. And it was an odd time to visit New York for the first time, because it wasn't, you know, a sort of normal TV New York experience. There was a sort of outpouring of warmth and love that was staggering. And it made me so happy. But the one, and we got to meet like Stephen Carell and Steve Colbert, and we just met a ton of amazing people. Dave Letterman, got to go and watch tapings and everything. And I got to like run through the streets of New York from one taping to another to make sure I saw it, I recorded it.
Really? Okay.
The one exception, the one person that like didn't fit into this whole, oh, and there were, like piles of flowers outside fire stations, and people were looking each other in the eye and just saying hello. And the air was just filled with this sense of like, of coming together and surviving. But then there was, oh God, now I'm blanking on his name. He hosts some game show. He's fabulous. He's African American.
Steve Harvey?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so and I can't say that I know him as a person, but we worked in the room adjacent when we did the live broadcast from here. We worked in the room adjacent from Steve Harvey, and the man had an entourage, Kevin, like I've never. It had to be like 25 to 35 people at all times. And every day he would come to. He was the only person that wouldn't like look at us or acknowledge us or like deign to even like, he was completely in his own Steve Harvey mode.
Wow.
And he dressed so amazing. And this was just for radio. This was, nobody was going to see him before or after this. He would wear like bright Kelly green suits head to toe, including shoes, including huge hat and tie, and he would carry a cane.
No.
And I was like, this is either the most, and it wasn't being video streamed. I couldn't look. And every day I'm like, what's he gonna wear? And it was always outrageous. He had one day where everything was peacock from head to toe. And he was,
oh my God.
He reminded me of the character that Morris Day that Morris Day pretends to play in Purple Rain.
Yeah.
That was like him in real life, and it was
oh my God,
crazy. It was crazy.
You know who else? It sounds like you absolutely to a T described MC Hammer today. Like we've been gigging with him, and he's got an entourage of 50 people
great.
At all times. He's got, like we did a show with him at Microsoft Theater Valentine's Day last year.
Yeah,
and he had a prayer circle before he went on stage, and it was full on like fire energy. I get goosebumps thinking about it because I went up to kind of like peek in and to listen in on this, and it was like a if you know anybody that's a beekeeper, it was like a hive of bees just zzz, and he was preaching before he went on stage. And I swear, man, and of course, I mean, he's got to have all the the dynamic outfits, but my host tomorrow, the guest host Mike Myers, says clearly he's too legit to quit. But he was, man. I can see Steve Harvey being that way, but the fact that it was just for radio, that's bizarre.
There's a pure goodness to MC Hammer. I mean, he's the real deal.
Yes,
he lost people to, he was a punchline for so many years, but he only lost his money because he loved his friends so much.
Totally.
He just wanted everybody to have a piece of his success.
Oh yeah, believe me, this is not dogging that guy. You knew that everything was sincere as well. I see a lot of people like that in the business, and I'm really grateful for it.
Is it wonderful when it happens?
Oh my God. Well, it could go either way, right? Some people take it for granted. Like now, the resurgence of 80s, if you don't support the people that are coming to see you, if you're not out there just thanking them every day for being there at shows, then you're a host, because otherwise you'd be home, just like waiting for a paycheck to come in.
But what if you're shy? What if that's hard for you?
You don't have to go out and shake everybody's hand, but you should be appreciative. I mean, it's one thing to be aloof, right? If you're shy, but there's.
Oh, I was thinking more on social media.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've seen bands that to this day from the 80s really feel like they need to be so apart from their, and I don't even like to call them fans, man. People that are supportive become friends, or they're your people,
Yeah.
I see like Boy George, incredibly shy, painfully shy, but that guy is such a gift to the industry. I cannot believe how talented he is. We did an arena show where the monitors went out, So he shut the band down, brought his singers up, had a guy with an acoustic guitar, and they just sang a cappella with an acoustic guitar, no monitors, and he was so humble. And he's shy. He doesn't like meet people because he's nervous. He's anxious. But when I see that, I just have so much more, respect for those guys. Mike Myers says, "Don't be Richard Marx, be Rick Springfield." Richard Marx may not be.
Don't be Rick Springfield if you're a 18-year-old girl, though.
Okay, I'm leaving that one because he may be on the show at some point soon. No, his band are good.
Oh, I love Rick Springfield.
Do you know? Well, I was going to ask you about your guilty pleasures because I wanted his mind. I want to do one gig, not a bucket list like he's my pass. I just want to do one show with him playing drums because.
Oh, I'm sure you will.
I'm a huge. Well, I mean, we do gigs with him, but I want to play, just because I'm a huge Rick Springfield fan. I love his music so much, and his drummer's a great friend.
One of the concerts I ever saw, and I was like 12 or 13, so in love with him, Kevin, so in love with him. And he came out on stage riding a tiny train with the little engineer's cap.
What?
And I'm in Casper, Wyoming, and just the nastiest looking junior high girl you've ever seen. Ooh, did you just get a weird thing on your computer?
I didn't know, but I have a weird thing. Like I have my bass player, Pondo, our bass player from A Flock of Seagulls. Look, he's coming in. Hey, Pondo.
What's happening?
This is here. I'll unplug it. This is Daria. Daria was a major entertainment mogul industry.
Oh no,
yes.
That's not true at all.
It's so true. It's so true. Come on.
I wanted to thank you so much for continuing all that beautiful music that was so much to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right?
Are you guys in there waiting for me right now? Oh, okay. They are.
Good to see you, though.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, thank you for doing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, but I'll be right there. 5 minutes, okay? Awesome. Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
will you answer an urban legend for me about the band?
Yeah.
So is it true? This is, and I'm glad it's you and not actually like Mike Score, because I'd be too embarrassed to ask. But I heard that the origins of his iconic hairstyle were actually that he had spiky blonde hair, and one of the dudes in the band couldn't see over it in the mirror, so he just went and pushed it down, and that became the look. Is that true?
Yeah. Frank Motley, the bass player, he was trying to look in the mirror, so he shoved his hair down, and he said, "Oh, looks kind of cool." So yeah, that's where it came from.
I don't know why that fills me with so much happiness.
Yeah, but it's funny because now they're selling masks or wigs, for that stuff, okay.
Oh, there's a guy in a group that just deserves every ounce of their success, and it just tickles me that a friend of mine is part of that now.
When we wrap up here in just a second, I'll take you out there so you can say hi to him real quick.
Thank
Because we're in the tiniest rehearsal room. So Pondo has this beautiful home, but he's got this tiny room that he built for a rehearsal place. And I'm not even kidding. It's like the size of a king-size bed. And
that works acoustically? It doesn't just reverberate?
No, there's some soundproofing, but this is what we had. We have the first gig in a while, so we're rehearsing. So I'll take you in there. You can say hi as I shut it off. But I was going to ask you two things. Number one, tell me, the people that know Daria, what would they be surprised to find out? What's a guilty pleasure of Daria's?
Oh, I don't know if there'd be anything they'd be surprised to find out, because I'm pretty much an open book. If anything, I'll blab too much information.
Okay.
But I love all horror movies.
Oh, okay.
I love the excellent ones. I love the well-crafted ones. I love the classics. I love the universal classics. I love the really bad ones. Like between unemployment and the pandemic, I've probably watched, and this isn't hyperbole, I have probably watched every horror movie on Netflix, Hulu, and Prime.
Oh my God. Okay.
I can't. And do you know what, Kevin? I think part of that is anxiety. I think a love for horror movies, because you can pinpoint your fear. Yeah. You're like, I'm not dealing with my own anxiety right now. I'm dealing with the anxiety of these zombies that are crawling out of the gutter.
Right. Sucks to be them. Yeah.
Yeah. The fear's fake suddenly.
I love that. That's a good one.
And,
Not
and
guilty.
then also I know an awful lot about comics.
Oh, man. Okay, that's another conversation we need to have, because one person you remember so much is Sarah Vowell, who the author. She was.
I love Sarah Bell's work.
Okay, so Sarah and I graduated high school together in Bozeman, Montana. You got her books. When we you talked about comics, we did a gig in Austin, Texas, and I ran into Conan O'Brien on the elevator, and I love Conan. I told him,
as one does.
But Sarah is the most ubiquitous guest he's ever had on the show. And one thing about 9/11 that you talked about is immediately after 9/11, when all the other night show hosts put their show on hold, Conan had a show the next day, and he brought Sarah on, and she put the world at ease, definitely the country at ease. They didn't laugh about what happened, but they brought levity to it, and I thought it was so brave, and I adore her.
I adore her too. I've never met her.
But her clarinet together, of all things.
No
way. But I told Conan,
so
cool. I said, man, for me, that was the moment. I was so proud of what you did, and certainly proud of Sarah. And but the way that she tells stories is so much like you. So
that's a huge compliment that I don't know if it's deserved. I think she's in an echelon far above, but to even make a sort of connection of any kind is wonderful of you to say. Thank you.
You're humble. I love the humility. I mean, that's a big part of why I've always adored you. So let's do this, because I'm being summoned. They're yelling at me. I'm gonna bring this bring my computer out. I'm gonna introduce you to the band. I'll have everybody else say hi, and then the guest host for tomorrow is actually here in the chat. He's gonna see that we'll be talking to the rest of the band. We have a guitarist substituting right now, who's joining us, Chris Lytle. But our guitarist from ready? I'm putting you on for 2 seconds. This is a big fan of yours on the radio. She's a radio host. Daria, there's Mike Score. And Bondo, you already met. And there's Chris. Hi. Chris, there's Daria. So I just wanted you guys to be able to say hi before we go off. So I'm gonna shut this down. I'll be right there. Hey, Daria.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much for being on the show. And
Kevin, it was my absolute pleasure, and I'm so delighted you're doing so well, and that you're doing what you're best at, and surrounded by like-minded art.
Thank you. Hey guys, if you're watching this, make sure that go to accesskevin.com tonight. I'll have this show archived. Daria, I would love to do a part 2 with you if we could, because there's a lot to catch up on, and I love your spirit. You're wonderful.
I love your spirit too.
Can we do that? Can we do this later this summer?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you for being here. Thank you guys for watching. Subscribe to the show and go find Radio Free Daria. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I love you. I'll talk to you later, hon.